Hope you have your Bible with you. We are going to use it in John 20 in a second. We've been talking about what it means to be free. What it means to be free. And I'm wrapping up the sermon series. Maybe you're happy or sad about that, but we're wrapping it up. And so this is 6 or 7 weeks of this about being free and overcoming challenges in life. If you ever want to go back and listen to any other sermon maybe you missed or re-listen to it, it's all online. We keep the website as updated as much as possible, and they're there. One of the things that people typically have a lot of shame about when they come and talk to me privately is through the years, and it's the issue of feeling ashamed that they doubt their faith. They doubt their faith. And it's a shame that so many people do doubt their faith. And today I want to talk about overcoming doubt. I want to talk about overcoming doubt. And we read a story here, we heard a story just a moment ago that talks about what it means to overcome doubt. Let me say something right off the top of the bat here, Laverne. You need to understand that there is no concept of a blind faith in the Bible. You've heard that expression before, a blind faith or a leap of faith. That doesn't exist in the Bible. I guess you say, trust me, because no Hebrew or Greek word means to believe someone without any evidence. That doesn't exist in the Bible. The only kind of true biblical Christian faith that we find, particularly in the New Testament, is one where we trust in Jesus and what he can do and who he is because we have sufficient evidence. At no time in the New Testament do they say, people of Israel, let me tell you to repent and put your faith in Jesus now. And someone raises their hand and they go, well, who's Jesus? It doesn't matter, just believe. Well, where is he from? Be quiet, close your mouth, just believe. Do you want to get baptized this today? Well, what about, knock it off. We don't ask questions around here. You just need to trust. That's nonsense. That would be a blind faith that is never demanded in the New Testament. They always have some kind of evidence to make it reasonable. And so a good translation for the word faith, the Greek word pistis, is trust. Is trust. We don't really trust a person we don't know. We can do a little bit of trust. If I jump in a taxi cab, a cab, and I'm going to trust they know where they're going, it looks legit. But I don't put my life in their hands. I mean, you might say, if I'd know them. I trust my wife because I know her. There's evidence to demonstrate she's trustworthy. So when we talk about faith, I want to make sure we're clear off the top here, is that it's about believing or trusting in them because there's evidence to believe so. Now, I know it's early, and it might even get earlier if the vote goes to 8:30, but stick with me. Stick with me here, because I'm going to do a little bit of philosophy with you, because this matters. I wouldn't say if it didn't matter. There's a difference between knowledge and certainty. We can know Christianity is true without being certain of it. When I use the word in American English, I say the word think. It means I'm kind of over 51%. Think about that for a second. I think the meeting's tomorrow. I think it's going to be cold later. I think the Maple Leaf Festival starts at 9 o'clock. I think that. Well, I'm pretty sure. Right? Does that make sense? I think that. If I say no, I up it up. I'm about 75, 80% on knowing. I know it. I know I'm married. I know I have children. Let's say it's 80-20. I know it. I'm above, 75, 80%. I know it. When I say I'm sure of something, I'm certain, in common English language, it doesn't mean we're always 100% sure. Like this morning, Elaine asked a question. She said something. She goes, it's warmer outside. And I said, I believe you. I'm sure it is. I'm not 100% certain. I haven't been there myself or done a laboratory test. In common language, I say that. But philosophically speaking, certainty means you're 100% sure. There's zero doubt whatsoever. 100% sure when we use the word in philosophy. So it is certainly possible to know it and not be sure. Now, this sounds maybe crazy, but I'm not sure I exist. Morning, Laverne, you might be just wonderful figments of my imagination, or I might be in someone else's dream. I could be a brain in some laboratory with little wires stuck in it, causing me to think that. I could be on an alien ship. I could be in the Matrix, and it's really run by robots, and I'm plugged up like a battery. I could be delusional, and none of you really exist, but maybe I'm the only one in the whole universe, and so my reality's skewed. Or maybe I don't exist, but you do, and you're dreaming me up. I mean, there's all kinds of logical possibilities. So I'm not 100%, I know, thank you, Vanna, her face like, David's gone crazy. But what I'm saying is, logically speaking, I'm not 100% sure I exist. I'm not 100, because I could be wrong. I could be delusional and so forth. So when you talk about logical possibilities, it's possible. It's possible that none of you exist and I'm just dreaming you up. It's possible. I don't think that's the case. But if I push it hard, in philosophy, we use certain only occasionally, like on logical proofs or maybe mathematical formulas like the angle of a triangle and so forth. But in common language, we can use, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be cold tomorrow. Okay, I'm saying this because I'm saying if I'm not 100% sure that I exist, it's not crazy to think I don't have to be 100% sure Christianity is true. That's not crazy. I say that because a lot of people who doubt their faith are looking for 100% certainty. And if they doubt anything beneath that, if it's 99.9998, they go, oh, I don't know if I'm a Christian. Because sometimes we can be a little bit, to use cheesy biblical language, we might worship the idol of certainty. As Alistair McGrath sometimes says it, and Greg Boyd does as well. We might be worshiping the idol of certainty. And so some people come into my office through the years or an email correspondence. I'm doubting my faith. And sometimes when I chase this down with them, what they're really doubting is certainty. And so if there's any room in that pie left over, if there's anything blue in the pie whatsoever, it's very difficult for them to think that they still are a Christian or they have a faith at all. Because they're not 100% certain. To which I say, I'm not 100% certain you exist. But I know you do. I know I do. I know I'm married. I know I have children. I know I'm standing here in First Christian. I know I went to the Maple Leaf Festival yesterday, which was awesome. I know that, but I'm not certain, but I know it. Okay, I say that because I'm trying to encourage you. We can know it on a high level probability, but we shouldn't worship at the feet of certainty. And if you doubt because of that, the rest of the sermon, maybe this is the best point for you, is just point one. And that is, when we talk about faith, we're talking about a trust. So I trust my wife to not beat me up later. I'm not certain she won't, but I trust that she won't. And if you said, David, do you know it? I'll say, I know she's not going to beat me up later. And Mike says, David, are you sure? Like, are you 100% certain? I would say, well, no, I'm not 100% certain. She might beat me up later, but I trust that she won't. Now, am I crazy to say, but I'm going to go home with her? You might say, David, I would never go home unless you're 100% sure. There might be some wisdom in that. But when I'm 99.98% sure, right, I know she's not going to. Right, honey? She smiled. That's good. Well, then, so why do we doubt? So if we stop chasing 100% certainty, why do I chase? If I'm going to stop chasing, I got to know every single fact and never, ever, ever, ever doubt. And never have the 99 to say 51% range. If I'm going to stop chasing certainty, but I've got wiggle room of I'm not completely sure if it's all true. I want to ask you to raise your hand because you probably won't tell me the truth. But a lot of people are not 100% sure. Why do we doubt them? In my experience with people in my own life, okay, I've come up about 3 or 4 main things that almost everybody at some level struggles with. Okay, so if you have those notes and you want to start taking notes, here are the top 4 reasons in my life, in my experience, people doubt the Christian faith. Number 1, sometimes we demand too much, like that certainty. Sometimes we just demand too much. Now I want you to turn to John chapter 20. If you already have it open, that's great, from what was read earlier. In John chapter 20, we have this really great narrative of what happens after Jesus' death and resurrection. If you'll notice carefully in John 20:19 and following, the first day of the week when the doors are shut, Jesus just appears in verse 19. But in verse 20, Jesus does what to the disciples? He shows them his hands and feet. The first thing he does is show them hands and feet. Now we learn from other texts, he also adds more things he does, but even in John, later on he'll say, you can touch here and there, grab it, give me some fish, I'll eat. Because ghosts don't eat things. We talked about this at Resurrection back when I was first here in April. The point is, the first thing he does is give them evidence. Look at my hands and feet, there are holes in them. You'll see I'm the guy you knew before on the cross. He shows them evidence. That's the first thing. He doesn't say, puts his hands in his pocket, covers up his feet. You just got to believe. The first thing he does is say, hey, look at here. I'm the same guy that you wouldn't believe if I don't show you evidence. That's the first thing he does. But Thomas isn't with them when that happens. And on in verse 25, when the disciples say, look in verse 25, the disciples say, we've seen the Lord. Not we had a vision, not we had a dream, not an angel visited, but we have seen the Lord. We saw him like I saw My mother-in-law, I saw whomever, I saw him. But he said to them, Thomas said, unless I see his hands and print on the nails, and place my finger on the mark of the nails, and place my hand in the side, I will not believe. Hence that famous picture in the background. There's Thomas. He's touching the side of Jesus. Unless I do that, what? Myself, I'm not going to believe. So what Thomas is not trusting are the other apostles' testimony. That's what he's not trusting. Because they all experienced, they got to do this. And Thomas says, no, unless I do it myself, I'm not going to believe. And poor old Thomas for centuries, now we call him what? Down on top. Bless his heart, that's not fair. Thomas is being a very good, biblical, theologically sound Jew. Because they believe in ghosts, but people don't get resurrected before everybody does at the end of time. So for Thomas to say, I'm not going to believe this, you might have seen a vision, you might have seen an angel, but nonsense. He might have pulled out his own Bible and said, don't you know your Old Testament? They don't get resurrected till the end of time. So Thomas is actually, it's a good demand he has. The problem with Thomas's demand is not that he wants evidence. The problem is he doesn't trust the apostles' witness or testimony of what they've witnessed. So then later on, the doors are shut. Verse 26, Jesus comes and does it all over again. Verse 27, and he shows right up to Thomas. Notice how Jesus knows what Thomas wanted. He was aware, even though he wasn't per se in the room in the same way. He shows up. That'd be some spooky stuff. He shows up and says, hey, put your finger right here and see my hands. Put out your hand, place it in my side, right here in the picture. Don't be without faith, or that is, don't doubt, but believe. Be believing. He wants him to help him believe. He says, my Lord and my God. Jesus says, have you believed because you've seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. So the point here in this text, what atheists and skeptics like to rip out of context, is not that Christian faith is that you just got to cover your eyes up and believe no matter what it is. That's not at all the point. He's fussing at Thomas because he didn't trust the apostolic testimony, the disciples who did experience it. And in the early church, that's exactly what had to happen. Imagine, Glenn, if all of your life you said, I'm not going to believe Jesus is showing up in my life until I see him for myself. Until he shows up in First Christian right here on this beautiful rug and I touch his side, I won't believe junk. That's what Thomas said. And if I demanded the same thing, God, Jesus, I'll believe your truth, you appear right now. You didn't do it. See, I told you, you're not real. Then Jesus would say it's the same thing to us if we said that. There has to come a point, as he's saying here, Jesus is saying to Thomas, that you trust those who have seen firsthand that he's risen from the dead. I've never met the resurrected Lord. I felt his spirit change my life, but I've never met the resurrected Lord. I can't wait to meet him face to face. And he's saying, blessed are those who don't demand that he shows up in the flesh every single time they want to believe something. Sometimes, listen, friends, we doubt because we demand too much. Sometimes we doubt because we demand too much. God, if you're real, right now, make all my bills go away. I've heard people on TV, send in your money, I'll send you a hanky, I've prayed over this little white handkerchief. That'll make all your bills go away. I mean, it's just sad, silly nonsense. Sometimes we demand too much. God, if I won't believe you unless something happens right now, a miracle today, right now, and we demand too much. I dialogue and read a lot of skeptics and atheists, and this is a common demand. If God would just show up right now, write his name in the sky. To which I tell them, there's no way you would believe. You would say, look at the weather pattern. That's so weird. It must be El Nino. Look at the nonsense. I mean, you would make a reason. Sometimes we doubt because we simply demand too much. We want 100% certainty, and we demand something like Jesus needs to show up right now or I won't believe. If that's you, I encourage you, let that go. Are you demanding too much? If you're always demanding too much, you'll keep doubting because he's not going to show up that way. Sometimes we doubt, and this is so common in my experience with people. They have repressed grief. Now, a few weeks ago, I preached on repressed grief, how to overcome that. I encourage you to listen to that sermon if you missed it. But I'm going to say this very briefly and move on. Please hear me well. When we have repressed grief that has not been resolved or processed, it's stuffed down inside, when we get depressed, anxious, worried a lot, it very much affects the way we feel God's presence. It acts like a helmet or a shield above us, metaphorically speaking, that blocks how much we feel or sense His presence. I have met with many people in counseling who come to me and go right off the bat and say, I don't feel God's presence, or maybe I'm not a Christian. I think Satan's attacking me. We get to talk, and I go, well, let me tell me more about you and your life, and come to find out someone just died last year, something happened, this. Have you cried about those things? Not really. So I said, well, can we talk about that first, and then we'll talk about Satan, maybe at the end of it? And it's a miracle every time. We go through all the grief part and come on the other side, and they go, I feel like God's right with me. I pray more, and I feel like He answers my prayers. It's almost a one-to-one correlation. And so for a lot of people, we doubt because we have grief that's unresolved. There's some terrible thing you went through in life. Did a spouse walk out on you? Did someone die? Did a business fail? Did a dream not come to pass? And you feel a deep sadness? I'm telling you, that can affect how much you have certainty or belief in Christianity. I'm telling you it will. And so what do you do about that? Just like with the first step, how do I deal with that one? You don't demand so much. 2, this one, you go to counseling. You get the grief out. The appropriate response to some trauma you go through is grief, not doubt. So what if I feel like I'm doubting and I'm in a sad state and I feel like He's not there? Well, then feel it. That's just a feeling. Feelings are okay. But I encourage you, one way to help get over this hurdle of doubt is to work through the grief. Sometimes we have repressed grief, and that makes us feel like we're doubting our faith, whether I'm really a Christian or not. Sometimes that's the case. The third thing is this. Sometimes we just simply don't want to make up our minds. We just don't want to make up our minds, and emotions take us here and there and here and there and here and there. I love how James says it, the Apostle James. In James, he says it's like a wave. Look in James chapter 1. In James 1, 5 through 8. He says, if you lack wisdom, ask God, who gives to all men generously and without reproaching, and it'll be given to him. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. And that's a common analogy in the ancient world of being on the wild water that pushes you back and forth. I chose this picture of the man who's taking a picture of the tidal wave because I thought, in just a second, he's going to be pushed to one of the waves. In just a moment, he's going to be wrecked by the waves. So for a moment, he's free, and then they hit him again. What if he stayed there and took another picture? And if you allowed himself just to stand by the waves are going to beat you. You can ride them or be crushed by them. And James, the word for doubting here in the Greek means something like to waver back and forth. To waver back and forth. Anybody on the side of the beach before, you throw just a little, maybe a toy boat or something, you can see it go in and come out, and go in and come out. And James is saying, when you ask God for wisdom, when you get the wisdom and that precious, wonderful gift of wisdom, let's say this is a precious present, and we go, thank you, God, for wisdom. You go, I don't know if I want to use it. I don't want to use it. I don't use that wisdom. Well, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. God, please tell me what to do. Please. I don't want to hear that. Okay, I'll do what I want. God, please give me wisdom. That's what James is saying. That's what he's attacking. And when you do it like that kind of doubting his wisdom when you receive it, you're like one who's going back and forth through the doubt. The waves will hit you back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. What's encouraging to me, Laverne, is in Jude 22, there's only one chapter, so you can say 122 if you want. There's only so many verses. He says, have mercy on those who doubt. Have mercy on them. Help them out. So sometimes we doubt because we just don't want to make up our minds. We like to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I know this is really true amongst skeptics, a lot of them that I've met. They believe they're so smart, they're above everybody who's made up their mind. And there's a term for people like that, besides living in denial, it's called agnosticism. Agnosticism means they're unsure if God exists. A lot of people take that route because they're above the atheist and the theist, the Christian. They're not sure, but they're open-minded. They're open. And they don't what James would say is, if a Christian does that, you're not open-minded, you're silly. You'll be crushed back and forth with the waves, here and go, back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes we doubt because we let emotions just take us everywhere we want to go. We don't want to make up our mind. We're just open-minded. We don't want to make up our mind. And last but not least, sometimes we doubt because we have legitimate unanswered questions. Notice how the first three are a little more psychological, emotional. The last one is the only one where we really get to evidence. I did that on purpose because in my experience, most people don't struggle with Christian faith because of just rational answers to good questions. It's some psychological or emotional problem. So sometimes we do have legitimate unanswered questions. For example, is there really good historical evidence that Jesus was raised from the dead? Is there good evidence that we can trust, let's say just in the New Testament for the Christian worldview, the Gospels? Can we trust them? People like Bart Ehrman tell me I can't. He writes in every single season, he does the bestseller, Why We Can't Trust the Bible. He's a New Testament scholar. So there's a lot of people out there telling me I can't. Online, websites, books. Richard Dawkins, God is Not Great. And it's Christopher Hitchens, who died recently. I mean, there are a lot of people telling me I can't trust this at all. Can we trust it? What about all the evil in the world and suffering in the world? If God is so good, why is there so much evil and suffering in the world? What about all the wars in the Old Testament? What are all those battles? Are there two different gods in the Bible, the Old and the New Testament? Is God of the Old Testament one of wrath and the God of New one of love and grace? These are common questions I hear. These are legitimate questions we have that can cause us to doubt. Well, I have answers to all the questions I have, but I'm not going to tell you now. Those are good questions to ask. Those are legitimate questions. Well, David, what do I do about that? If I doubt those things, what do I do? Here's exactly what you do. You drill those questions into the ground. You ask and research and read until you get the answers you need. You don't give up. You do not give up. There's too much help out there. And if you don't like to read, you can listen to it on audiobooks. If you don't like doing that, then come talk to people like me. I will be happy to help. Well, David, what if I do like to read? Okay, here are some quick resources for you, and I'm done. Alistair McGrath wrote a whole book called Doubting. Alistair McGrath has 2 earned PhDs, one in, I think, microbiology and a second one in historical theology. He's a brilliant guy at Oxford. There's an easy-to-read book called Doubting. It's really good. So that's specifically on doubt. Gregory Boyd got his PhD at Princeton, and he's a pastor now, I think. He wrote a book called Benefit of the Doubt, really good book about doubting. So these are specific about doubting. I'm going to start you with 2 books on doubting. If you have doubt issues, there you go. Well, David, what if I have those unanswered questions that are legitimate, that are bigger about just how do I get over doubt? Well, I've recommended some of these already, but On Guard by William Lane Craig is great. I wrote a book called A Skeptic Challenges a Christian. Paul Copan wrote a book called Is God a Moral Monster? He talks about warfare in the Old Testament and all those things in the Old Testament that are difficult sometimes, and the New, slavery, how they treat women. It's a great book. Friends, we don't have to be 100% certain, but we can know that Christianity is true. And I encourage you this morning, whatever reason, if you find yourself doubting in the faith, don't be ashamed of that. And if you are ashamed, then come talk to me or someone else you trust and say, I have my doubts. And I'm going to say, good, let's think about these things together. Let's think about these things together, and let's see if we can get to a place where we get the doubts out. But doubts are healthy and okay. It's okay. And you can still be a Christian and have some doubts. I can still be married and have doubts if I can trust her every second. I can still be married. I don't get divorced the second I doubt my wife. I'm no longer a Christian the second I have a doubt about God or Christianity. Does that make sense? I can stick with them.